Something felt wrong the moment Aro stepped inside the house that evening. It was not something he could see, but something he could feel. The air was still heavy, almost like the walls were holding a secret. Usually when he came home, there was a quiet comfort waiting for him. Even if Mira wasn't talking much, her presence made the place feel alive. But today, the silence felt different, colder, distant. He closed the door gently behind him and placed his keys on the table. His eyes moved across the room, searching for something familiar. That's when he saw her. Mira was sitting on the couch, her back straight, her hands tightly clasped together in her lap. She wasn't watching TV, wasn't on her phone. She was just sitting there, staring at nothing. A long day. Arav asked softly, trying to keep his tone light. Mira didn't answer immediately. She blinked slowly, as if coming back from a deep thought, and then looked at him. There was something in her eyes he had never seen before, fear mixed with guilt. "Can we talk?" she said. Her voice was low, almost breaking. Arav's smile faded a little, but he nodded. "Of course." He walked toward her and sat on the chair across from the couch. The distance between them felt larger than it actually was. He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees, waiting for a few seconds. Neither of them spoke. The ticking sound of the wall clock grew louder in the silence. Mira took a deep breath, then another. Her fingers tightened together, and Arav noticed how pale her knuckles had become. She looked like someone standing on the edge of something dangerous, unsure whether to step forward or turn back or off. "I need to tell you something," she said. He felt a small knot form in his chest. "You're scaring me a little," he replied, trying to ease the tension. "I know," she whispered. "And I'm sorry." That word "sorry" hit him unexpectedly. It made his heartbeat quicken. People didn't say sorry like that without a reason. "It's okay," he said gently. "Just tell me." Mira looked down again. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall yet. It was as if she was trying to stay strong long enough to say what needed to be said. "I've been hiding something from you," she admitted. Arav felt the knot in his chest tighten. His mind started racing, jumping from one possibility to another, but none of them prepared him for what came next. I've been seeing someone else." For a moment, Arav thought he had heard wrong. The words didn't make sense at first. They floated in the air, disconnected from reality. He stared at her, waiting for her to correct herself, to say it was a misunderstanding, a mistake in words. But she didn't. Instead, a tear slipped down her cheek, and just like that, everything became real. Arav's body went still. His face showed no reaction, but inside something shattered quietly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a deep, silent break like glass cracking under pressure. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't ask questions. He just listened. Mira wiped her tear with shaky fingers. "It wasn't planned," she continued. "I didn't go looking for it. It just happened." Arav's jaw tightened slightly, but he stayed silent. "I was feeling lost," she said. "You were always busy, and I felt like I didn't matter anymore." That part stung, not because he believed it was true, but because he realized she had felt it. "I should have told you earlier," she added. "I know that. I just didn't know how." Arav finally spoke, his voice calm but distant. "How long?" Mira hesitated. "A few months." The answer felt like another quiet blow. Months. That meant smiles he had trusted, conversations he had believed. Moments he had thought were real, all of them had been hiding something else. Aarav leaned back slightly, Cahal's eyes still fixed on her. His mind replayed the past few months in fast flashes. The late nights, the distracted replies, the small changes he had noticed but ignored now. Everything made sense, and somehow that made it worse. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Mira said softly. Arav let out a slow breath. "But you did." His tone wasn't harsh. It wasn't loud. It was simple, honest, and that honesty cut deeper than anger ever could. Mira nodded, tears falling more freely now. "I know." There was another pause. Then she said something that changed everything, I thought. "Maybe we can move past this." Arav frowned slightly. "Move past this." Yes, she said quickly. I don't want to lose you. I need you to understand. It didn't mean what you think it means. Arav's eyes darkened slightly. Then what did it mean? Mira struggled to find the words. It was confusion. A mistake. I was trying to fill something that felt empty inside me. Arav felt a strange mix of emotions rise inside him. Hurt, yes. Disappointment, definitely. But also something else, something quieter, distance. I'm telling you the truth now, Mira continued. Isn't that what matters? Arav looked at her for a long moment. The truth matters, he said slowly. But so does what happened before it. Mira lowered her gaze again. I thought, maybe you could accept it, she said in a small voice. That sentence landed heavily. Accept it. Arav repeated those words in his mind, trying to understand them. Accept betrayal, accept broken trust, accept that the person he loved had shared something meant only for them with someone else. For the first time, a flicker of emotion appeared on his face. Not anger, but disbelief. Accept it. He asked quietly. Mira nodded, her expression desperate. I don't want to lose us, Arav. I still care about you. Arav stood up slowly. The movement was calm, controlled, but it carried weight. He ran a hand through his hair, turning slightly away from her. He needed a second to breathe, to think, to feel something without letting it overwhelm him. The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls felt closer. The air felt harder to breathe. I need some air, he said finally. Mira looked up quickly. Arav. But he didn't stop. He walked to the door, picked up his keys again, and paused for just a moment. Not to look back, but to steady himself. Then he opened the door and stepped outside. The night air hit his face, cool and sharp. It felt real, unlike everything he had just heard. He walked without direction. His steps slow at first, then faster. His mind was loud now. Questions, memories, emotions all crashing into each other. But beneath all of that noise, there was something else. A quiet realization. He had loved her completely. He had trusted her fully. And now he was standing alone in the dark, trying to understand how everything had changed without him noticing. Back in the house, Mira remained on the couch, her hands still trembling. The silence around her felt even heavier now. She looked at the door, hoping he would come back soon, hoping this was just a moment, not the beginning of something permanent. But deep down, she knew something had broken. And even if it could be fixed, it would never be the same again. Outside, Arav kept walking, not knowing where he was going. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about what Mira needed. He was thinking about himself. And that thought, quiet and unfamiliar, marked the beginning of a change he didn't yet fully understand. Arav didn't sleep that night. He sat on the balcony for hours, staring at the dark streets below, watching the faint glow of the city lights. The cool night air brushed against his face, but it didn't bring comfort-only clarity. Every memory of the past months replayed in his mind, each one sharper than the last. The small smiles Mira had given him, the quiet conversations they had shared, the dinners they had eaten together, all of it now felt tainted, like a beautiful painting marred by a careless stroke. He had trusted her completely, and now the foundation of that trust had been shaken. But as much as he felt hurt, he realized he didn't feel anger in the usual way. There was pain, yes, deep and twisting. But there was also something else, a strange sense of awakening. He remembered how often he had put her first. He remembered compromising, adjusting, smoothing over disagreements, quieting his own needs to keep the peace. He had always thought that love meant sacrifice, that his own happiness was secondary to hers. But now, as he sat alone with his thoughts, he began to question that belief. Was love supposed to hurt this much? Was it really sacrifice if it left him hollow inside? His heart ached, but it also felt lighter. For the first time in months, he was thinking about himself, not about her, not about what she wanted, not about what he should forgive, He realized that he had spent so long giving that he had forgotten how to protect his own heart. The next morning, he returned home, feeling a quiet resolve. Mira was still there, sitting on the couch, looking smaller somehow, her eyes tired from crying. She glanced up at him as he entered, hope and fear flickering across her face. He noticed the subtle tremble in her hands and the faint redness around her eyes. She looked fragile, but also aware of the weight she had placed upon him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence hung in the air, heavy and expectant. And Ara felt it like a physical presence. Finally, Mira broke the silence. "Arif, I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost desperate. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I made a mistake." Av nodded slowly. "I know," he said. His voice was calm, even, but there was a firmness beneath the surface that hadn't been there before. There was no anger, no shouting, no dramatics. Just clarity. The calmness surprised Mira. She had expected a storm, an outburst, a breaking of some kind. But there was none. Instead, there was a quiet strength that made her uneasy. He continued, his voice measured. "I won't fight you. I won't beg you to stay." Her chest tightened. "So, what does that mean?" she asked. "It means I'm choosing myself now," he said simply. His eyes met hers with a calm intensity, and Mira felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't revenge. It was self-respect. Something she had never seen in him before. She had always taken his patience for granted. Over the next few days, Arif's change became more apparent. He started focusing on himself. He spent more time at work, putting his energy into projects that had been waiting for his attention. He started exercising again, feeling the rush of movement and strength through his body. He took walks alone, sometimes long enough to feel like he was shedding old layers of himself. He stopped trying to fix things for Mira. He stopped seeking her approval. He stopped pretending that everything could be the same as before. And in doing so, he discovered a quiet confidence that had always been buried under his willingness to compromise for love. Mira noticed it immediately. She watched him as he moved through the house with a new rhythm, a quiet assurance in his steps. He no longer sought her attention, yet his presence filled the space differently than before. He spoke less, but when he did, it carried weight. His tone had shifted from soft and accommodating to calm and deliberate. Even his smile had changed. Wasn't gone, but it was no longer offered freely. It was measured, thoughtful, and entirely his own. She felt something stir inside her, a combination of admiration, longing, and fear. She realized that the man she had taken for granted was no longer waiting silently for her to return. He had changed, not because of anger, but because of pain and clarity. He had discovered himself in the spaces she had left empty. And it scared her because she understood now that he might not come back to the same life they had before. He had grown, and she had only realized too late what she had risked losing Arif. Meanwhile, didn't notice her watching him. He was lost in the new rhythm of his life, in the newfound freedom of making decisions for himself. He reflected on what he wanted, what he deserved, and what he would no longer compromise. He realized that forgiveness was not automatic. It was earned. Trust could be rebuilt, but only if it was mutual. He had spent years building a life of shared routines, laughter, and quiet understanding. Now he understood that life could not be built on unilateral compromise. Love required balance, and he had finally found the courage to demand it, not in anger, but in quiet strength. One evening, Mira tried to reach out to him. She approached him in the kitchen as he prepared a simple meal, his movements calm and deliberate. "Arif, can we talk?" she asked. He paused, then looked at her. There was no rush, no eagerness to respond. "We are talking," he said simply. She hesitated, then said, I know I hurt you. I see that now, and I want to fix it. I want to make it right." Arif set down the knife he was using and wiped his hands on a towel. He didn't speak immediately. He studied her face, noting the sincerity in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the quiet desperation in her tone. He remembered the pain, the betrayal, the sleepless nights. But he also remembered the strength that had been growing inside him during those days alone. Finally, he spoke. "Show it," he said. "Don't just say it. Show it." Those words struck her harder than any confession she had made. She realized that it was not enough to apologize or explain herself. Words had power, but actions had more. And if she truly wanted to reclaim what she had lost, she would need to earn it not through pleas, but through honesty, patience, and change. Arav returned to his meal preparation, calm and focused, but the message was clear. He had shifted from a man who had been defined by his love for Mira to a man who now defined himself by his choices and his self-respect. He was no longer waiting for her to validate him. He was no longer bending to fill gaps that only she had left open. He had discovered the power of living for himself. And that made him magnetic, strong, and undeniably present in his own life. Mira felt a new tension in the house. She was living in the same space as him, but the dynamic had changed. The unspoken rules, the familiar patterns, they were gone. Every glance he gave her carried weight. Every silence spoke volumes. She realized that she had underestimated the depth of his love, the extent of his patience, and the potential of his strength. The realization made her heart race, not just with fear, but with longing. Arav continued his transformation quietly. He spent more time reflecting on what he truly wanted from life. He took up a new hobby, a small project he had postponed for years. He called friends he had lost touch with, reconnecting with parts of his life that had been neglected. He began journaling, capturing his thoughts, his feelings, and his new understanding of himself. Each day he felt more grounded, more complete, more alive. Mira watched all of this unfold. She realized she had never seen him truly like this before, not because he hadn't existed, but because she had never needed to notice. Now she did, and it unsettled her. The man who had once been so familiar was now someone she could almost not recognize. But she liked what she saw, and that scared her. She realized she had missed the opportunity to nurture the person she loved in his entirety. And now she might be too late. One night, as Arav returned from a long walk, he found Mira sitting by the window. The moonlight fell softly across her face, highlighting the shadows of worry and hope intertwined there. She looked up as he entered, and for a moment there was a silent understanding between them. Neither spoke immediately. The air between them was thick with emotion, regret, longing, hesitation, and anticipation. Arav walked to the other side of the room, placing his coat on a chair. He turned back and looked at her, and in that look was a quiet power. He had endured betrayal. He had faced pain. He had chosen himself. And in doing so, he had become more than the man she had known. He had become someone she might have to earn back or lose forever. Mira's heart ached, but it also stirred with determination. She realized that the days of taking him for granted were over. If she wanted him, truly wanted him, she would have to meet him where he was now, not where he had been. She would need to confront her own choices, her own weaknesses, and the pain she had caused. And perhaps, only perhaps, that could lead them back to each other. But for now, Arav remained quiet, calm, composed. He had found his strength, and the house felt different because of it. The silence was no longer empty. It was filled with possibility. The past could not be erased, but the future was still unwritten. And as he looked at Mira, he knew one thing clearly. Nothing would be the same again. The next morning, Arav woke up early, leaving Mira still asleep. He went for a walk through the quiet streets, feeling the crisp air against his skin. Each step reminded him that he was no longer a man defined solely by love for another. He was a man aware of his worth, a man who could love deeply, but without losing himself in the process. Arav had changed. That was undeniable. The man who once had waited patiently for Mira's attention, who had softened every disagreement to preserve peace, was no longer the same. He carried himself with a quiet strength, a calm authority that demanded respect without shouting. The shift in him was subtle yet profound. Every movement, every word, every glance seemed measured and deliberate. Mira noticed it immediately, and it unsettled her. She had taken his patience and love for granted, assuming it would always be there, like a steady river flowing beside her. But now the river had deepened, and she realized that if she wanted to reach him, she would have to meet him on a new level. With honesty, courage, and humility, days turned into weeks. But the house no longer felt the same. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words, with things left unsaid. With the tension of what had happened and the uncertainty of what might still happen, Arav moved through the house with calm purpose. He cooked his meals, worked on his projects, and spent time alone reflecting. He didn't seek her out. He didn't ask questions. He simply existed, fully present in himself, no longer defined solely by the life they had shared. Mira watched, her heart aching with a mixture of admiration, guilt, and longing. She had thought she understood him, but she realized now that she had only seen pieces, fragments of the man he truly was. The betrayal she had committed had forced him into a transformation she could not ignore. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the room with soft golden light, Mira approached him. She found him sitting on the balcony, gazing at the distant city lights. The silence between them was not heavy this time, but charged with possibility. "Arav, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling but determined. He turned to look at her, calm and composed, his eyes steady. "We're talking," he replied simply, his tone even but firm. She noticed how different his presence felt. He no longer waited for her to lead the conversation or define the terms. He had claimed his own space, and she realized she would have to approach him as an equal, not as someone seeking forgiveness. "I know I hurt you," she said, her voice quivering. "I see it now. I understand what I've done, and I want to make it right. I want to fix what I've broken." Arif studied her carefully. He didn't respond immediately. He noted the sincerity in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the quiet desperation in her tone. He remembered the nights he had spent questioning himself, the hours of solitude that had reshaped him, the realization that he could no longer bend himself to accommodate her mistakes without losing himself in the process. Finally, he spoke. "Show it," he said quietly. "Don't just say it. Show it." The words hit her harder than she had expected. They were simple, but they carried weight. She understood that apologies alone were not enough. Actions mattered. Trust had to be rebuilt through consistency, honesty, and real change. And she knew now that if she truly wanted him back, she would have to earn it, not plead for it. From that moment, their interactions shifted. Mira made small but deliberate changes, listening more, noticing the things he cared about, showing care without demanding his attention or approval. She didn't overwhelm him with explanations or justifications. She let her actions speak. Arav, in turn, observed quietly, appreciating her efforts but not allowing them to define him. He was no longer the man who adjusted to maintain harmony. He was a man aware of his worth. And he moved through each day with a quiet confidence that left an impression on everyone around him, especially Mira. Weeks passed, and the distance between them began to feel different. It was no longer a gulf created by betrayal, and fire it was a space filled with reflection, growth, and potential. Mira realized that she had underestimated him for years, assuming his love would remain unconditional and unshakable. But now she saw the depth of his patience, the strength in his calm, and the power of his self-respect. And she realized that if she wanted to be with him again, it would require more than words. It would require commitment, sincerity, and a willingness to meet him as the man he had become. One evening, Arav prepared to leave the house for a short trip, a chance to clear his mind further and solidify the new patterns he had been creating in his life. Mira stood in the doorway, watching him, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. "Are you leaving?" she asked, her voice small but tinged with hope. He paused, then nodded slightly. "For a while," he said. "I need space. And so do you." Tears welled in her eyes. "Is this the end?" she whispered. Arav looked at her, calm but serious. "I don't know," he said honestly. "That depends on what you truly want, not what you think I'll accept." Her heart pounded. She realized that this moment was a test, not a punishment. but a measure of whether she could rise to meet him where he was now. She had to demonstrate patience, understanding, and genuine change. She could no longer rely on his forgiveness or his love as a safety net. She had to show that she was worthy of the man he had become. Mira stepped closer, her voice trembling. I made a mistake. I thought I was missing something. But now I see I was losing everything. Arav's expression softened, but only slightly. I loved you completely, he said quietly. But love without respect doesn't survive. Those words lingered between them, heavy and undeniable. Mira realized that he was not speaking out of anger or spite. He was speaking from a place of clarity and experience. He had endured betrayal, he had felt pain, and he had chosen himself in the process. He had become stronger, calmer, and more grounded. He had become someone who could love, but not at the cost of his own dignity. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I want to fix this. I want us back, she said earnestly. Arav didn't rush to comfort her. Not this time. He had learned to guard his heart, to move with patience, and to value his own worth. Then don't say it, he replied. Show it. She understood immediately. Words were cheap. Actions mattered. Trust had to be rebuilt through tangible efforts, through consistency, through respect and understanding. If she truly wanted him, she would need to act, not just speak. Arav picked up his bag and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he paused and turned back to her. This time, he said, if we find our way back, it will be because we both choose it with honesty. Then he left. The door closed softly behind him, and Mira was left alone in the quiet house, feeling the weight of her choices. She had realized something essential. Love was not about acceptance at any cost. It was about mutual respect, honesty, and the willingness to grow together. Without that, love could not survive. In the days that followed, Mira reflected on what he had said and done. She began to understand the depth of what she had risked losing and the power of the man she had taken for granted. She realized that if she truly wanted to rebuild their relationship, she would have to meet him as an equal, not as someone pleading for forgiveness. She had to demonstrate patience, understanding, and genuine change. Every small action, every sincere effort mattered. Arav, meanwhile, continued to live fully in his own space. He explored new interests, spent time with friends he had neglected, and focused on personal growth. He exercised, read, and wrote down his thoughts, reflecting on the lessons he had learned. He had discovered the power of living for himself, of asserting his own needs and desires without guilt or hesitation. In doing so, he became magnetic, strong, and undeniably present in his own life. Mira watched him from afar, learning to navigate this new dynamic. She realized that she could no longer rely on his love to prop up her own comfort. She had to earn his trust and admiration again, not through promises, but through consistent, sincere effort. She understood now that love was not about taking, it was about giving, respecting, and growing together. Arav's quiet strength continued to shape their interactions. He no longer tolerated disrespect or dishonesty. He no longer allowed his heart to be bent out of shape for convenience or fear. Every conversation, every moment together carried the weight of his self-respect and the clarity he had gained. Mira learned to approach him with care, thoughtfulness, and honesty, recognizing that the man she had loved was still there but transformed, eventually. The distance between them began to feel less like a chasm and more like a bridge, one that required care, patience, and mutual effort to cross. Mira understood that reclaiming their relationship would be neither quick nor easy. But it was possible if she proved herself worthy of the man he had become. And Arav in turn realized that while he had been hurt, he was not closed off. He was willing to engage, to forgive, and to rebuild, but only on equal footing. With honesty and respect guiding every step, in those weeks both of them grew in ways they hadn't anticipated. Mira learned humility, patience, and the importance of self-reflection. Arav learned the power of self-respect, personal growth, and quiet confidence. The house that once felt heavy with tension now held potential, filled with moments of understanding, unspoken promises, and tentative steps toward a future that could be rebuilt, stronger, deeper, and more resilient than before.